You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
It's all systems go for the Paris Olympic Games, and we just can't wait. We're talking to the pros on how to learn from the live stream and what it's like to actually be on an Olympic team. But wait, there's more. We're busting cooling down horse myths. And remember that dude in the mankini? Thanks for tuning in. From Heels Down Mag, a podcast where horse pros chat about what's happening in the horse world over drinks. Welcome to Happy Hour. I'm Justine Griffin.
I'm Jessica Payne.
And I'm Ellie Woznicka. Welcome to episode 126 of Heels Down Happy Hour.
Hi,
guys.
Hello, hello.
What's going on?
How's the heat wave treating you guys?
Oh, it's just
It's
the
hot.
huge here. Yeah.
It's hot everywhere, though. I mean, like, there's times where we're at Tryon this week, and we've been here for 2 weeks. And there are times, like, I'm pretty sure it feels hotter than when we were in Ocala. And then we look at the weather, and it's colder at home. So
Wow.
it's kind of all over the place.
So, Ellie, I saw Jess in person. It's craziness.
I know.
They were at WEC, and gosh, you're busy as ever with all the horses, with your entourage of people. But it was so nice to see Jess for a quick minute. But talk about the heat wave. She was wearing a sweater in Ocala in July.
I'm not kidding you. I literally had worn a dress to dinner with the clients and stuff. And then I got back and put shorts on to get ready for the Grand Prix. But it dropped in the temperature quite a bit that I have this summer sweater that's see-through and holes
cute.
and stuff.
It's adorable. Yeah.
But it is definitely still a summer sweater. I was oh my goodness, I am cold. So I went and put a tank top underneath and put that on because my short sleeve shirt was not going to cut it.
That's funny because a summer sweater is definitely a Florida winter sweater.
Yes, normally.
And it was a surprisingly weird day where it was very cool that night. Because being outside and watching the Grand Prix, I was I'm just going to sweat to death. But it was actually lovely. And
it was nice.
There was a breeze. Yeah, it was funny. But so this episode is brought to you by All Things Equestrian. All right, Ellie, so I hear you have a very patriotic drink for us this time.
I do. And it's sweet. So obviously I've got to bring it to you guys. So it's a red, white, and blue shooter.
This is our first ever actual shot.
Shot, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll need 1/3 of an ounce of grenadine, 1/3 of an ounce of white cream de cacao liquor, and then 1/3 of an ounce of the blue curacao. And so you're just going to pour in your grenadine into your glass. Then you're going to kind of float the white creme de cacao on top. And then you're going to slowly, you usually pour it over the back of the spoon or something like that, right? And then you'll have your, 2/3 full. And then you're going to do the same thing with the spoon with the blue curacao. And it'll be nice and striped. And it'll be sweet and
that?
That'd be cool.
Right?
If you're having an Olympic watch party, this is cute. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And it's sweet. So it's an easy shot to take.
Yes. It's just, unfortunately, it's a shot. So it doesn't last long enough.
That's cute, though. I like that.
So I heard you have some cooling horse ideas for us.
Yeah. So, it's July. Last month we talked about how the heck are we staying cool? And it's funny this time of year, I feel like social media is rampant with all the new things, do's and don'ts of how to keep your horse cool. There was a new study, I think, that came out of Japan that I feel always makes the rounds this time of year on Facebook, where someone shares just a piece of it about, is a sweat scraper effective in this day and age? So I thought we could go through these myths and dispel them, which ones are a bunch of baloney. So common myth. You guys tell me. Well, I guess you tell me if this is true or false. We'll do that. We'll play a little quiz game.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. The first one is heat illness only affects horses in hot and humid temperatures.
False.
Yep.
Absolutely. So horses' body temperatures can reach up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit, which when exercising in that can still happen when exercising in cool temperatures. So they can overheat no matter where they are. Just here in Florida, it seems to happen more quickly. All right, next one. You shouldn't apply cold water on a hot horse because this can cause shock or even colic or maybe even tying up.
Also false.
False.
Absolutely. So actually, it's the opposite. The repeated application of cold water, like just constantly running the hose over both sides of their body as quickly as you can, is the best approach to keep horses cool, especially after exertion. So you just want to put as much cool water on their body as possible and as quickly as possible. All right. Here's the one I mentioned. Should you always scrape off water because leaving water on a horse will prevent him from cooling down?
It's false because I just read somewhere that actually like the cooling technique is that you can scrape off the water, but it's 2 minutes slower if you're scraping than scraping and walking. Your best, like you said, the fastest. So I don't know if that's like a true or false. Like it's not.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt
you can
anything.
scrape it. It's like not going to hurt anything, but it's apparently 2 minutes slower than straight running cold water.
Right. So water left on a sweaty horse warms up and then evaporates. But cool water, like when you're cooling them out with a hose, the water just evaporates, and therefore you should continue to just keep applying the cold water. So as it evaporates, you're still hitting their skin with, their hot skin with cold water. So when you scrape it off, you're basically just shortening the time that the water is in contact with the skin.
Yeah.
And you're letting that heat sink in that way. But, I think like if your horse, you can eyeball that your horse is pretty much cooled out and you want to scrape him to help him dry faster. I think that's totally appropriate,
Yes. We're talking about when they're like really, really, really hot.
Exactly. Yep. So here's another one. Leaving a wet towel on the horse will help with cooling them down.
That's false.
That's one I've never heard of.
Yeah, I think it inhibits it, probably.
I would think so. The hair couldn't stand up, right?
Yeah, well, and they couldn't evaporate, like we were just talking about the water.
Yep. So horses' heat loss depends on sweating to release that metabolic heat buildup in their muscles. So leaving a wet towel on the horse to cool them down prevents the evaporation that we're talking about. It also blocks liquid sweat from evaporating as well. All right. So I've got just 2 more. All horses cool down in the same way.
False.
Yeah.
Yeah, false.
So that one size fits all approach is garbage. I think like if you got like some just get hot fast, right? Some just their bodies don't cool them down as quick as others. I will say I've noticed that like horses, especially as I'm dealing with an unfit horse right now, I find that fit horses that are like used to working in specific conditions tend to weather the heat a little bit better. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Hold it down a little bit quicker than ones that are not fit and are just like pasture fit,
Yeah.
All right. And last one. Horses exercising at high intensity reach their peak core temperatures during peak exercise. This is a tough one.
I would assume so, but I'd be lying if I said I am ever exercising any of my horses at peak to know for sure.
Yeah, right. This is a question for you, Jess.
Yeah, I would think actually not.
Right. And I think it has something to do with what we were just talking about with fitness,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So
it's back to the same thing that they all kind of go back to different, and some of them can hit their blood pressure and everything, or not blood pressure, but their heart rate can go up, and some, in the same intervals, their heart rate hits it faster. So that's what I was kind of thinking is that, some of them, you can do the same exact gallop set and some come down off their heart rate so much. It's just like humans, right? Well, you and I could run to the road and one of us is going to have a higher heart rate than the other one.
Exactly. Yeah. So they cite a couple of good studies here. In one study, researchers recorded that on average, endurance horses reach their peak core temperature when completing 75% of their exercise. So say like 75% of a 40-kilometer, leg of endurance riding. And they said that the endurance horses' body temperatures return to baseline within the mandatory 60 minutes of recovering time, with an average of 10 to 15 minutes of cooling down, pouring water buckets on them, yada, yada. It took them about an hour to recover. And they compare the endurance horses to trotters, which reach their maximum temperature during their recovery period 34 minutes post-exercise. So some horses have temperature values that can reach like beyond 101, body temp, and then a heart rate that will return quicker. And 30% of the trotters that they analyzed at the end, they had to recover in a cool environment to get back to their baseline. So it just shows like it depends on the work, it depends on the fitness level, and also individual needs, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that we don't think about a lot.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't, especially up here, right? I'm just like, hot is hot. And I just try to like get through it. But definitely if you're keeping a horse in shape, these are really good tips and tricks.
Yeah, this was a great article. So we'll definitely share this in the show notes. But Jess, what do you got?
So we talked a little bit about, who was on the eventing team, but since then the U.S. has announced the dressage team and the show jumping team. And so we will all we are weeks away from the Paris Olympics. So I'm so excited to watch. The eventing comes up first, and then it's dressage for 2 days. Then it actually you watch the jumping for 2 days, and then you watch the dressage finals, and then you go on to the individual finals for the show jumping. So it's kind of back and forth, but it is going to be a long week of a lot of coverage of it. So I'm super excited. But as for the team of who we will be cheering for in the dressage, it's Adrienne Lyle with her horse Helix. You have Marcus Orlob with Jane, and you have Stefan Peters with Super Caspin. So I'm really excited to watch these guys perform and cheer them on, along with their teammates for the jumping. It's Kent Farrington with Greya. You have Laura Kraut with her Valentine, and then you have McLean with Ilex, which is one of his newer ones, but it jumped amazing over the last couple of weeks. So he's in top form. All these horses are looking really good. And the individual alternate for the show jumping is Carl Cook, and he could ride as in the individual slot. So we'll have to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, very exciting. We got a great group of horses and riders.
It's a really, really fun group. So I'm excited. They'll go on cheering with Will Coleman, Boyd Martin, and Caroline Martin. So really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie, what do you have for us?
Okay, well, I'm sure you guys saw Shane Rose, the Australian Olympian, his mankini. So
it was so funny.
Right.
And that's ridiculous. It became so much like controversy.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. I feel like it had its own news cycle for a while.
It was.
Jeez. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was like, for me, I thought it was great. It was like, it's not like he did this in like a formal like competition, right? This was a costume class, and he did something like bull rat inspired, right? And it was just like in good fun and lighthearted. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And this is a little behind the scenes for you guys. We always laugh because there's this video from like the 70s that I brought up when I first started joining the podcast of this guy riding completely in the nude, like nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Bareback in the nude. So, I mean, Shane didn't do that. Okay. It was in fun. It was just like blown.
It was a
way
costume
out of proportion.
contest. Like, yeah.
Exactly. And so, which, I mean, I understand that the, Equestrian Australia was like saying, oh, it's like against our code of conduct. But I'm like, okay, but, it's not like this is a normal class. This is a costume class.
Right. He didn't show up to the 5-star in the mankini. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, he's not saying I'm going to perform in the Olympics this way. Like, okay, come on, And they took it like crazy seriously. They were saying like, you might not even be able to go to Paris, which is just crazy. So it was really cool because the Wallaby Extravaganza event with the sponsor of the Bowral Kubota actually provided a mankini to all spectators, and they donated $100 for every competitor that tries to outdo Rose's costume in the class. And it was just like to kind of undo and give Shane support with this like Equestrian Australia going kind of against him for just being lighthearted and just having a good time. And it's just like, he's such a great ambassador of the sport and the country. I mean, he's gone to the Olympics 3 times. He is a phenomenal rider, and he's always, from what I've read online, always like nice and lighthearted and is fun to be around. So it was just like kind of a movement that they did, this stand with Shane Rose, to kind of be like, no, like he deserves to go to the Olympics. You can't penalize him for having a good time. And like, he made people laugh. Isn't that like the point,
Yeah, I'd understand if it was offensive to certain groups or, you know what I mean? Like, but I do feel like he did this in good fun for everybody,
Yeah.
And he's super excited too, because obviously Equestrian Australia has decided, you're right. Like, so many people came to him or came to like support him to the federation. And they said, okay, you can go back to training. You're no longer under investigation and you can plan on Paris. And Shane was just so like nice about it. And he said, like, now it's time to, go ahead and get the Australian equestrian in the media for a more positive reason, an Olympic gold medal. And it was just like, he's been so positive throughout this whole thing. And I just think I'm glad it ended this way. I would have been so mad if they had said, you can't go to the Olympics because you had a good time and actually brought smiles to people's faces.
Right.
So that's my good story. And also, like, come on. I think it's fun. I may or may not have bought a mankini for Matt. Just
I was going to say, we could have a horse husband mankini riding contest or something.
Oh my gosh.
Is that fair? Because Jess's husband is an Olympian, so I'm not sure that's very fair.
He would still not wear one.
I was going to say, I don't know if we could talk Doug into
I don't think there's anything we could talk him and paying to do that.
Oh boy. Do you love a good drink and wish you could share that joy with your favorite 4-legged friends? Well, now you can with Zero Proof Horse Treats. We love Zero Proof Horse Treats here at Heels Down. I met Melanie, the owner of Zero Proof, at the Kentucky Horse Park when I was at the Thoroughbred Makeover last year, and you could tell she pours a whole lot of love into the horse treats she makes through Zero Proof. They're the only horse treats on the market that are flavored like cocktails, which means they are perfect for our show. With flavors like mint julep, apple martini, and the newest flavor, Carrot Cosmo, your horse will be enjoying the finer things in life just like you do. And you can feel good about feeding these treats because they're made from all natural, limited ingredients like distiller's grains, oats, alfalfa, and just a touch of molasses. All the ingredients are grown proudly in Kentucky, and they're manufactured by the same mill that has produced feed for 15 of the last 20 Kentucky Derby winners. How cool is that? These treats have less sugar than you think, with NSCs comparable to a controlled starch feed. Plus, they're small and they don't crumble in your pocket, which is personally why I love them. They're great for training or at the horse shows. And if you use our coupon code HEELSDOWN, you will get a free gift and free shipping when you visit zeroproofhorsetreats.com. All right, guys. So I wanted to talk to you about All Things Equestrian, which is a fun equestrian boutique based in Florida, actually. But they make these lovely, light, ultra-weight sun shirts and these beautiful pops of color with really unique designs that you really won't find anywhere else. And y'all both got a shirt too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So what makes All Things Equestrian unique is, one, it's a small woman-owned business, which 2 thumbs up for me. That's really important to me with where I spend my money. They're also in Florida. That helps. But All Things Equestrian makes shirt styles for riders of all disciplines. So they have a traditional English-styled sun shirt, but then also a Western-styled shirt. And Ellie, you got to try the Western style, right?
Yes, and I love it. It was so exciting for me because it's like the perfect combination, right? You still have like the chest pockets, and you have the nice like Western collar and even like the Western cuffs. So it's definitely more like stretchy and breezy than like my standard Western shirts, and I've never seen a sun shirt in this like style before. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, they look very cool. They look like blousey in that they stay nice and cool, even though they're like a button-down shirt, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think
That's super cool.
Jess and I both got the English shirt. I went wild and got a really fun, unique color.
Which one did you get?
It's purple and it has like a bit design, like a very classy bit design. And it's beautiful. It's kind of brave for me. I'm not usually like a super like loud coloring, but I got the purple shirt and it has lime green bits like design on the shirt. It reminds me of like a Lily Pulitzer design, to be honest.
Oh,
like
nice.
It's just bright and beautiful, very Florida, and adds a nice like classic pop of color. So the shirt is purple. I tend to wear it with black breeches or tan breeches, but I've gotten tons of compliments on it. And what I like the most about it is definitely you could tell like a woman rider designed these shirts because she thought of everything you want, right? Like it has the nice mesh under the sleeves. The fabric is very soft and very light, like probably the lightest sun shirt I own, but it's still
really
SPF
light.
30, which is awesome. It's all moisture wicking. And they have this, what's interesting, like she's a fashionista because she thought about this, that there's a little ruffle to the top of the sleeve. So like
There is.
Off your shoulders. And at first I was like, I put the shirt on and I was like, it doesn't just fall naturally down my shoulders. And then I was like, oh, wow, I love this little like puff of a ruffle. It's
tiny. It's a little puff and like,
you wouldn't notice it like when you're riding, but you notice it when you're walking around. Yeah.
When you're walking around. And that's what I love about it is like, I think it's going to be super cute with like jeans and stuff. So I wore mine. I got like a cream one with like, it's kind of like big stripes, like boxier type thing. And it's like pink and green or like pink and brown and blue. And they're really pretty. It's called
the rat catcher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got the rat catcher and it's really pretty. So I wore it with the navy or black pants, same thing. But honestly, like it's something you can wear like going around when it's hot, when it's getting cooler and stuff like that at the horse shows and I need jeans, but I still want a light shirt. I think this is going to be like the perfect shirt.
Yeah, it's super high quality. I really like it. There's a lot of options out in the market and this one very quickly rose to the top of my list. Yeah. And my shirt had
100%.
a beautiful, like the zipper, that runs down the front of the shirt. Yep. It was like a beautiful rose gold color. And I think it's the first time I've seen that in a sun shirt. It was really nice.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even tell you guys, but I got this like wild, like cactus pattern. Did you guys see the like navy one with the cactuses?
I
and, like,
love the cactus. I thought it was cool. Yeah.
I felt like you just, I was like, yeah, this is not like something I would normally pick, but it's so flattering that it let me branch out into a pattern that I wouldn't normally do. So yeah, I'm definitely, it's actually in my washing machine right now, so I can take it to the horse show I'm going to this weekend. So,
perfect.
Nice. Yeah, I've washed and worn mine a few times. It stands up well in the wash, like no issues. It came out looking brand new after several washes. So the quality is really great for the price point. They're $84, off the website, and it's a shirt that will last. And that means a lot for me in Florida because I am hard on the shirts. I can ride 5-6 horses a day in brutal rain, heat, sun in Florida, and these things, they rock. They're great all day. So if you wanted to check out all things equestrian yourself and add a little pop of color to your life, you can check out their website. It's allthingsequestrian.com. All right, everybody. Ahead of the Olympic Games, we thought we would call in a good friend of ours who can help us think about the live stream as we're all excited to tune in and watch our favorite athletes compete in Paris. And naturally, we thought of Amelia Newcomb. Hi, Amelia. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on. I always love talking about horses, so I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, we're always excited to have you. So thanks for coming back on the show. And it's such an exciting time this summer as we're so excited for the Olympic Games to begin in Paris. And it's obviously the equestrian sports, dressage, eventing, show jumping, all happening at the beautiful Versailles. And I was wondering, I just, you're such an excellent teacher, and all of us, the vast majority of us sadly don't get to go to Paris to watch in person, but we will be watching on TV or streaming it online. And I thought it would be great to talk to you about what we can learn from an educational standpoint from the performances we're about to see in Paris under the big lights in the big arena. And, myself included, I'm so excited to learn from some of the best riders in the world. So, Amelia, do you have something that you're really looking forward to about this year's Olympics?
I always just love seeing the horses. Like, they're so beautiful. They're so athletic. And then the partnership between the horse and the rider, I think, is something that I always admire, how they're able to communicate with such seemingly invisible aids. And we all know how hard riding is. And so it's just amazing to see how they are able to make it look easy and effortless, even though we all know that those performances and the Grand Prix level is just such a difficult thing to do. And that said, you can learn so much by watching the top riders, even if you're not riding the Grand Prix or anywhere near their level of riding. Watching what their body does, what their seat does, what their legs are doing, that can help your riding actually a lot. So I'm most looking forward to those things about it.
Absolutely. So, at least I can speak for myself here that I'm very far away from riding the FBI, let alone the Grand Prix, but I love dressage, and I think anyone can learn from just watching and a lot of what you've just described. But are there certain tips you have for when you're watching the riders go down center line, what you're watching as a professional yourself to try to take home and maybe use in your own riding?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, of course, we all love watching the horses because the horses are so beautiful and they move with such expression and lightness and balance through the movement. So I like watching the horses, but then sometimes what I'll do is, rather than just watching the horse, I'll focus solely on the rider and really study what their seat is doing, really watch their seat and see how the movement and the rhythm of the horse gets absorbed and followed through their seat and through their hips, and then watch their legs. And even though these riders communicate with very subtle aids, you can see them giving cues with their legs. So you'll see them close their leg, or their leg will go back for the flying change. And then they'll push their heel down and take their leg off again. So try to really see and study those subtle aids that the rider is giving with their legs, and then take that into your riding. Ask yourself, are your heels down? Are your legs off? Are you giving an aid and then getting a reaction from your horse and then pushing your heels down and taking your legs off? And I actually had the opportunity to go to Aachen. So I was in Aachen last week, and it was an amazing experience. So many of the combinations that are going to the Olympics were riding in Aachen. And I was just mesmerized by every single rider. Their position was incredible. Their seat was perfect, and their heels were down. Their legs were off. Most of the time you could see their leg was completely off the horse unless they needed to give a signal. And then they would put their leg on, get the reaction from their horse, and then push their heels down. And then the other thing was, oh my gosh, their hands. Their hands were just together and in front. You could really see the forward feeling hands, which is what we all want, is that back to front riding where your hands are just in front of and above the withers, and you're just giving those very subtle wrist and ring finger aids. And so I definitely, after Aachen, I came home and I was like, okay, I have to work on my position, because every single one of the riders, their position was amazing.
And it goes to show you that the position is so key, right, to achieving what you want with your horse. I mean, that's the proof in the pudding right there, right? Watching the riders at Aachen, and it's if you do it right, this is what you can achieve. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. But I think your horse is your mirror. And so if you want your horse to be supple and expressive and light and balanced, you have to be all of those things as well. And your horse is really only as good as you ride them. And the more that you develop an independent feet and you're able to really follow and absorb that motion and then give clear and effective aids to your horse, the more that your horse will perform for you. And definitely watching the Olympics coming up and watching the riders at Aachen, that just really hit home for me, where I was like, okay, I have to ride better. If I want my horse to do better, I have to work on my own riding.
That's such a good way to put it. I'm always curious going into the Olympics on what can we learn from the live scoring that's happening like in real time. Is there anything that we should like keep our eyes open for with those live scores for the Olympic tests?
Yeah, I think it's always great when they show you the scores of the movements, because it's just an opportunity to get to learn what the judge is looking for. And, sometimes there will be some discrepancies between the judges, which is why they have so many judges, is to balance out and also to understand that the movements may look different from different angles. For example, when you do your first center line and you halt at X, the judge at C really only sees the straightness. Like if you're straight, okay, you get a good score. The judge from the side is able to see more about the frame and whether or not your horse is square. So that's sometimes why you'll see different scores from different judges around the arena. And then I also think it's really educational because, for example, at Aachen, so we all have mistakes, right? In a test, you're going to have a bad transition or a movement that gets screwed up. And so you might get a 4 for that movement. But the next movement, you'll get an 8 for if you do it well. So that's one of my favorite things about dressage, is that each movement gets a different score. So even if you have a hard time or something happens, keep riding and forget about the mistake and make the next movement better. So I really think the live scoring is great. They also are doing, in Aachen, they did what's called spectator scoring, which is an app that you put on your phone, and then the spectators score along with the judges. And I was amazed how accurate the spectators were. I mean, they were like pretty much right on with the scores the judges were giving. So that was just a fun way, I think, for the audience to be a little more involved in the show.
Oh yeah. I hope that I wish they would do that at shows by me. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it is cool.
So I, like you, see these Grand Prix riders and I think, oh my gosh, I need to ride so much better. But one thing I always am impressed by is how they stay so still. How would I learn to ride effectively, but also stay that still at the same time?
Yeah, so it's actually an illusion. And this is where I think a lot of us, we watch them and we're like, oh my gosh, they're not moving. They're sitting perfectly still. I have to try and sit still and not bounce. And when you try to sit still, you actually bounce more because you're on a moving object. Like horses are moving, and in the trot and in the canter, there's impulsion, which means that your horse's back is bouncing up and down and a little bit side to side. So even though it looks like they're sitting still, they're actually moving a lot. The trick, though, is that they are moving in perfect harmony with the motion of their horse's back. So if you can imagine your seat, and basically your seat is your 2 seat bones. That's where most of the weight is. And then there's a little bit of weight on your pubic bone. And that triangle of your seat has to move in 3 dimensions with the motion of your horse's back. And that requires a lot of stability and strength and flexibility in your core. So that's the hard part, is that you have to have flexibility in your hips and in your lower back in order to follow that movement. And then you also have to balance that with having strength in your abs and also in your glute muscles and your glute med muscle and in your oblique abdominals, all of those stabilizing muscles so that you can really control the movement. And your seat is everything, because if your seat is connected and following the movement, then that's what allows you to give clear and effective leg aids and then clear and effective rein aids. So don't try to sit still. It's not going to work. You're going to bounce more. Try to feel that movement, feel the rhythm of your horse's motion coming through your seat. And that's what's going to give you that illusion that you're sitting still, but you're a centaur, right? That's what we all want. We want to be a centaur and move with our horses.
There you go. That's such a great way to put it.
I know. I like that too. So, Amelia, I'm not riding at Versailles anytime soon, but sometimes, I can still feel that same pressure at my local horse shows with the grandstands and everyone watching, or at least it feels like everybody's watching. But these Olympic horses are so tuned into their jobs. I think that's one of my favorite things to watch, is just when the rider kind of comes down the chute and enters the arena, and how are they using those seconds before it's time to walk into the ring, how they can start like getting that feeling. Like, how do you get that feeling with your own horse that when you enter the arena, that you're not distracted by everything that's around you? Or, I've definitely had those days where I leave the warm up, and then the second I walk over to the competition where I'm about to walk into the arena, it all falls apart. How I feel like what we're about to see at the Olympics, those riders are like masterful at managing their mind and keeping their horses in tune with them. But do you have any tips on how to do that yourself?
Yeah, it's hard, and it's definitely an art. It's one of those things that takes practice to get to that level. And it does take a huge amount of concentration and discipline to be able to go into a stadium like that with so many people and stay focused. So a couple of things. Let's go back to your level first. And I think it's really important to remember that when you're starting out and you're just going to your first horse show and you're getting yourself out there and you're getting your horse out there and you've never done it before, I think it's important to remember to just have fun and love your horse, because that's really what it's all about, is just starting and doing it. Don't put so much pressure on yourself that you torment yourself or that you expect it to be perfect the first time, because it's never going to be perfect the first time. So that's always my best advice, is when you're just starting out, do the best you can to prepare. Make sure you can ride through your test at home. And then on show day, it's just about getting out there, having fun. The truth of the matter is that at most of these local shows, everyone is so wrapped up and worried in their own stuff and in their own horse that no one is really paying that much attention. And we all have bad rides. Even at Aachen, there were some rides where the horse spooked, or they had a terrible ride, or the movement didn't go well. And I think as horse people, we all have empathy for one another. Whenever I see a rider that has a bad ride or having a hard time, I always think, I just want to be there for them and tell them it's going to be okay. Tomorrow's going to be better. So I think it's really important that we foster that type of a supportive community. It's always easier to sit on the sidelines and be critical than it is to actually be out there. It's the man in the arena, right? So I just think that it's important to be supportive. And then as far as the riders in Aachen, and also I'm sure it's the same in the Olympics. So the warm-up is like really calm and quiet. And I actually got a chance to watch the warm-up in Aachen, which I love watching the warm-up because you see a lot more how the riders, train at home, how they prepare their horses for the show ring. So the warm-up is pretty quiet and, not a lot going on. And then in Aachen, they go through this entrance, like through this kind of alleyway into the stadium. And the crowd in Aachen was crazy. Like, it was so loud and everyone was clapping and cheering. And some of the horses did okay with it. And some of the horses had a hard time. They went through that alleyway and they heard all the sound and the people. And there were a few horses that kind of wanted to spin around or that got spooked and got nervous. And it was really interesting to see how, those riders handled it. Every horse is a little bit different. So some riders had the strategy of, really getting the horse going forward around the arena. Other riders did mostly walking around the edge of the arena or even let their horses halt for a moment just to breathe and settle before their test started. And then I think once you're at the level of the riders at Aachen or the riders in the Olympics, you know your horse so well and you know what your horse is going to be like in those situations that gives you confidence to really stay focused and support your horse in the way that's needed. And that's one thing that I love about the sport of dressage is it's many, many years of consistent training and developing that partnership and that bond with your horse that gets you to the place of being able to perform at the Olympics. So hopefully that answers your question. You asked me a lot of questions right in a row.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you.
So I have a question. So right before you talked about the warm up and stuff like that, but like, what do you do, those precious seconds of time before the judge rings the bell and you need to start your test? Like, what do you do to mentally prepare for your test?
So you mean like when I'm going around the edge right before
when you're going around the edge of the arena and, you're waiting, you've got to go in, like, is there anything you do mentally to like, take a deep breath and make sure, is there anything you do like to kind of help yourself prepare for that test?
I just always go back to my why and what my intention is. And one thing that I found that really helps me is to just feel a sense of pride and to be proud of my horse and to be there on that day. And I think that with horses, they all have something, either they get sick or they get lame or they get scared of something or you fall off or you're sick or you're injured. And so much of getting to show day is overcoming all those hardships with your horse. And so what I found is just to always say, I've done my best to prepare to get here. And how lucky am I to be on top of a horse and to be riding? And I'm just going to enjoy this and have fun and feel proud of my horse and myself. And that really helps me to have a better ride, because if you go in and you put so much pressure on yourself to do it perfect and what is everyone else thinking and what is the judge thinking, then usually it ends up going worse for you. So that's my best advice is have fun
really good.
And enjoy
and think about why you're there. That's really, really cool.
No, honestly, Amelia, I needed to hear that. I'm going to my first horse show this weekend. And I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to go with it because I get to enjoy my horse. Like, that's just exactly what I needed to hear. But I've got one more question for you. So I know, and I actually was just watching one of your videos before training the other day, but where can our listeners find more of your educational courses?
Yeah, so we're all over. The best place is go to amelianewcombdressage.com. And there's a ton of videos. There's a ton of different blog posts. There's a bunch of free PDFs and different resources for you to download from my website. You can also find me on YouTube. So if you go on YouTube and search my name, Amelia, and then pretty much anything like Amelia and canter and rider position or any problem that you're having with your horse, there's probably a free YouTube video to help you out there. We also have a Facebook community, Amelia's Dressage Club, and I'm on Instagram at Amelia Newcomb Dressage. So we're all over.
Thank you so much for coming, Amelia. We so appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So our next guest has been to the Olympics himself and has been on the podcast several times. Welcome, my husband, Doug.
Thanks for having me again.
Hi, Doug.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Doug.
Toasty down there, huh?
Yeah. So we polled our listeners, who obviously everyone's super stoked for the Olympics that are about to be here. And since you are an Olympian, we thought it'd be great to talk to you about your time at the Olympics in Tokyo, especially like all the stuff people don't get to read about and you know, in the news stories and the results of. There's a lot of work that just has to go into the prep and keeping the horses ready, one, fit, but two, safe and happy through travel, yada yada. So we've come with a long list of questions, and I hope you're ready.
I'm ready for it. Let's see.
All right. Well, first of all, let's go back in time to 2021 and think about what your routine was like for you and Van Diver. Like, I guess after that, the last mandatory team outing and then leading up to the travel, like, what was your life like? How were you keeping him fit, but how were you prepping for that big travel day when he got on an airplane?
Yeah, I mean, we had a completely unique circumstance with COVID. So,
right.
You know, I've always thought I think the horses perform best when they feel most comfortable, consistent routine, all that sort of stuff. So we really were preparing as well as we could, as if it was any other competition. We did, all of our normal conditioning work, and we sort of sync up the farriers. So, you're, not going to have to get their shoes. The feet aren't going to be too long, too short, whatever it might be by the time the games rolls around. So you do as much prep as you can that you're not going to have to do anything last minute. But the unique part about Tokyo, we had to do nearly a 2-week quarantine in Aachen, Germany. So it really disrupted a lot. And they had just epic rains in Germany too, leading up to the game. So I do think we ended up with a pretty big disadvantage because we really didn't have much in the way of a really adequate place to keep the horses fit those last 2 weeks leading up. And I think that was a definite challenge, but you know what, you can only control what you can, and you deal with the best with what you can do and roll with it from there.
Sure. So what, talking about keeping the horses fit, like what were your riding days like? People always want to know this, like how do you, like what is your routine, I guess, 7 days out of the week? How do you keep the horses fit?
Well, we can, really simplify it. We train and try to have them fit enough for as if it were a 5-star. And so leading up to that, we would generally do our fitness work or our canters, gallops have maybe Tuesday and Saturday of every week. We'd probably jump on the Thursday and flat on the other days. Any of the days we were working outside of the gallop days, Jess and I, we do a whole lot of walking with horses to keep them fit. Because I think it's the only other, it's old school Jimmy Wofford etched in stone. It's the only other 4-beat gait. So you're using the same muscle groups you would while galloping, and there's absolutely no way you're going to have any sort of injury as a result of the walking. And so they would walk probably about an hour a day in addition to whatever you're doing. So a flat day, jump day, whatever, they'd go out and do a whole lot of walking. We don't actually do much in the way of trot sets at our place. So that would be our rough plan. And we tried to keep that as normal as we could be when we were on the road as well. The big challenge is we're pretty accustomed to showing up to a competition with the trailers full of horses and lots of activity. And the hardest part is, you're plucked away from your family and kids and Jess, and, you're dropped into Germany with one horse and not a whole lot else to do. So we tried to fill the day as best we can, either walking around the city or, just doing stuff to occupy you, because frankly, you could get totally mad. And I think the horses too would not appreciate 24/7 interaction like they do like having a bit of time by themselves.
That's fair. So speaking of, right, the fact that you had to travel to Germany before you even went to Tokyo, how did you handle the stress, not only for yourself, right, being plucked away from Jess and that your support system, but also for your horse during that time?
Yeah, I mean, you just try and do your absolute best to keep their routine as normal as possible. We typically at home, we would tend to ride sort of top down. So the horses that are most experienced or most important in the end would be first to go, and then work back. By the end of the day, we're doing the 4-year-olds. If they miss a day or get cut short a little bit, it's just not a big deal, because frankly, they don't need that additional level. Frankly, the intensity being a touch lower is probably helpful for them. So, even on the road, we try to keep a normal schedule, breakfast, probably on them at 8 o'clock or so, and do what we can. And, do your best the entire time, really just keeping their routine as normal as possible for them.
How did he handle the environment at the Olympics? We just asked Amelia Newcomb the same question of, that big arena. I guess I'm trying to remember, were there spectators no?
No, nothing
Yeah.
at all. So it was kind of an eerie, it was an eerie place, really, because it was it's the size of a soccer stadium nearly, and there might have been 20 people watching. It was just a very odd experience, without a doubt. With that, in our preparation, we tried to get the horses used to the biggest environment we can. So at home, we built, a bunch of flags and music and all that sort of stuff as we ride on a daily basis. And then, we choose to compete in places where there is a lot more activity. So, call it like a Tryon would have just a ton of stuff happening. And so Quinn would come along with us to some of the jumper shows as well. He may jump only 1 or 2 classes, but then we'd be able to flat or hack around the complete circus. And the more that he sees that, the more normal that becomes. And we were able to be at the facility there for really about the week prior. So, it's always the first day or two, they're a little on edge, but by the time the competition rolled around, they were pretty accustomed to the environment.
And so I know you said you want to keep everything the same, but did the way that you fed Van Diver change at all before, during, or after the Olympics?
Try to keep it as consistent as possible. I mean, grain we could keep steady and consistent. The hay situation, they have very good quality hay that we're able to get overseas, and so you just try and keep that as absolute uniform as possible, because again, they're going to be stressed as is, and of course we keep them on ulcer medication the entire time and that sort of stuff, so try and keep them as their body as what is comfortable as possible. But yeah, we really did make a huge effort to keep everything the same.
What about for you? I mean, as someone who's traveled internationally, I just feel like I always feel disgusting on after big trips.
It was it was
the best shape.
It was a pretty, in some ways, a pretty stressful situation with COVID. We ended up having daily COVID testing getting done, and so you tried to stay as isolated as possible, because frankly, you've worked your life to have this opportunity, and they could have plucked you out of competition at any point along the way if you had a positive. And the joys of getting that positive, you'd get stuck into solitary confinement for 2 weeks.
No.
So that was just, not only are you competing in probably the most nerve-wracking stage that you have had in your life, but then on top of that, you could get plucked at any moment, have the guys get on your door and say, come with us, you're going to sit in a single room for 2 weeks. I mean, it was just, God, it was that part about it was certainly draining. And I think when we finished up show jumping, he jumped really well. My biggest relief, when I called home, was I got a COVID negative that I knew I could get out of the country. That was just a massive, massive relief.
Well, I mean, because my follow-up question to that is how often were you out with the team or doing training with the team? And
we couldn't do a whole lot. So we were not allowed to go to the athlete village. We stayed in a hotel, which was beautiful for sure. But there were 2 or 3 restaurants in the hotel. And, as a team, we were pretty well a unit. So not every meal, but often we ate together. But at the same time, Japan was in a state of emergency. So, everything was pretty well locked down. You're not having any big group gatherings. Everything was quite structured for sure.
So what about before you left for Japan? What were you doing? How often were you training with the team?
We checked in a lot. Eric DeVander was a coach at the time. He did show up. He would come to our private farms pretty frequently leading up to it. And in that effort to remain as normal as possible, we were competing a bunch of the horses leading up to it as well. I jumped in a 3-star jumping the weekend before we went to the training camp itself. So Quinn actually flew, I think, it was a Thursday or Friday, and we jumped through Sunday, and then I flew out on Monday to go join up with them in Germany. And I think that for us, as well as the horses. Again, normal stuff keeps you distracted and sharp at the same time. Distracted, not thinking about the stress of what's coming, but as sharp as possible. If what led us to success was a sort of a baseline of, we had a lot of horses going, and I think if we had sort of cut back on that, I think it would have been challenging, because taking yourself out of what makes you as sharp and comfortable as possible. The moment you get plucked out and you only have one horse to do, that just is a whole lot more challenging, I think, in the end. The more horses you have, the more busy you are, less time you have to think about what's could go wrong or not go wrong. And I think certainly for me and for many others, I think the more activity makes things a bit easier.
So I'm curious then, right? So obviously with the restrictions you had with COVID, you didn't really have the team together as much. But what do you think the American team is doing right now, just a few days before leading up to Paris?
Yeah, so nearly certain they're now over in France at a sort of a staging farm, per se. And with that, trying to, each person, we had a lot of meetings and talks and group sort of get-togethers leading up. And I thought one of the things that was done really well, we were all sort of put in the same room and said, okay, during the peak competitive time, say Saturday morning of cross country, per se, and then went around to each team member, what do you like to have happen, or what don't you like? There might be a pet peeve where some ex-rider hates when somebody wants to come up and talk to them or whatever, where others are like, the more nervous they get, the more chatty they get, and the more interaction they need, because frankly, if they're sitting in the corner by themselves, they're going to go crazy, where some of the others
want the silence.
want to go hide in the closet, basically.
I am not the silent one.
Yeah,
I just want to keep talking.
Yeah, Jessica. But I think it was really interesting then, because it sort of heads off any sort of conflict, because frankly, if Jess is here, she's going to talk your ear off, and
if I know they don't want to talk,
point,
I'm not going to walk up to them. Then
I'm pretty chill, but like that last hour, I'd rather not.
Yeah, we walk away. Yeah,
at me for an hour, right? So, and in that way, then it sort of heads off competition, sort of any sort of conflict, and then also puts everybody in a space that they can be successful with themselves. So I would expect a lot of, I don't know if team building's the right word, but sort of getting to know each other more than you would ever at individual competition. And then, of course, just trying to perfect your ride or horse or technique about something or whatever it might be. I think there's, everybody's used to a lot of activity, and we don't really have much going on. So for us, whenever any team member was riding, we pretty much were all there watching, and, to say supporting. You might try, a little more of this or that or whatever it might be. It's, trying to just get that slight edge if at all possible.
And I think that's really interesting. I think that's something we don't really think about, is like the different headspaces that all the different riders need. So it's interesting that you guys actually have like a meeting to talk about what you guys need.
Oh, I think it was
to be
great.
In the right mental space. That's really cool.
It was great because honestly, when we went to Lima in Peru, went to the Pan Ams, we did not have that conversation. And I think there was definitely more tension because of that. In Tokyo is really honestly super peaceful in that way.
That's awesome. Well, Doug, thanks so much for coming on. Do you want to share any Olympic predictions before you head off?
Well, you hope everybody does really, really well. There's so many small things that can go either right or wrong. It's incredibly difficult. I think
it's going to be fun to watch.
Happen, but I will. I'll be pouring my bourbon and watching for sure.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Looking to add a pop of color to your riding wardrobe? All Things Equestrian offers the most unique and comfortable sun shirts available for both Western and English riders. Made with high quality, soft, and light fabric, All Things Equestrian shirts offer SPF 30 protection and hold up to long days in the saddle. Stand out in the arena with some style, courtesy of All Things Equestrian. See for yourself at allthingsequestrian.com. All right, guys, it's time for Rose and Thorn.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go if no one else.
I'm like, no one's jumping at the gun.
I know.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I will start with my Rose because I actually had to take Brave up to Cornell, not for an emergency visit today, because back in May, she had this weird episode of like swimmer's tail, which I'd never heard of before it happened. But basically, all of a sudden, she just had like a limp tail. Like it just like wouldn't work. Like she went out to use the bathroom and it was just laying on the ground. And I was like, what in the world? So I'd brought her up and we had her on, some pain meds or whatever for a couple months and some rest. And she went up for her neurological consult today to see if she needed an MRI, if they thought it was something that just, she tweaked something and now she'll be okay, or if it was something that might still be compressed and she might need an MRI. But my Rose is that we went up there and she's fine. She's all good. So I'm happy that that was a positive Cornell experience.
I was going to say, did you use your frequent flyer card? Because
Right?
it looks like you're getting a coupon or something.
Well, honestly, small animal insurance is so much better than horse insurance. So it's like they cover everything. Doesn't matter. Like they paid for all of her pain meds. They paid for, I have it through ASPCA. Like this visit with the neurologist and stuff was like $200, but I'll pay $20.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So definitely wish equine insurance was like small animal insurance.
No joke.
Yeah. But my thorn is that with the heat wave, some of my MS symptoms have been acting up, which is, it is what it is. So like my vision gets kind of blurry and I'll just get like super exhausted way sooner than normal. But one of them is like my speech, like I'll mess up words. Like I'll mix like the beginning and end of words. And like I'll call Matt, like, I'll mix Brave with Matt and call Matt Bat. And like, I'm like, oh God, not Bat, like, so it's just like funny that my mind gets all wonky. But I have a book club that I go to with a whole bunch of like ladies in their 60s. I am the youngest one in the book club. I meant to say distance makes the heart grow fonder, like that like expression for this book we were reading. And instead I said distance makes the fart. And all these ladies just looked at me and I'm like, because I just started laughing and I loved this 6-year-old woman just looks at me and grow stronger.
Oh my gosh.
Smell stronger. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, I'm glad that I could laugh about.
At least they have a good sense of humor.
Exactly. I'm like, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's also really funny when it's not in like a professional situation. Yeah. That I'm like, oh my God, I just said fart in front of like all these people. Like
that's okay. That's amazing.
I mean, granted, I say fart in front of all the people, all of our listeners all the time. But,
it's more embarrassing when you didn't mean to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, at least you have a sense of humor about it, Ellie.
Exactly. Life is too short. So what about you guys?
Jess, why don't you go?
I can go next. So my Rose is that Ocala was so much fun. We went to Ocala. The horses jumped great. We went down for the 4-star and the 2-star, and we brought Beasley, the one client. So it kind of felt like a vacation. And my mom came and the kids went swimming and we had so much fun. And it was really cool how the World Equestrian Center in Ocala put together the FEI at night. Like every class was almost a night class. So it was totally different. And it was a nice change. And then we came to Tryon and we've been here for 2 weeks with the exact opposite, like 16 horses. So we're back to like normal here. We went from like 3 to back to normal with like 16. So it's fun. We got to go to Ocala, do that, and then be here at Tryon. And then we're going to go for Quincy's first 5-star in Canada in August. So we're excited and go back up to London near Toronto, where I was born. And so it would be really fun. I'm excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we're also going to go. Doug's parents are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. So we're going to go we just talked about how I'm going to go to London or Toronto area from where I was born. We're going to go to Rochester where Doug went to college and go see his alma mater and then go to like the Finger Lakes too. We've rented a house. His whole family did. So we get to see everybody. So that's definitely my rose.
That's not far from me, Jess. So if you guys have, I'm close to Finger Lakes. So if you guys want to meet up at a winery or something, I'd love to officially meet you.
Yeah, that'd be so fun. Yeah, because they said, well, then you'll have to text me or actually tell everybody what are the good wineries around there because we do want to go to a couple.
Oh, boy. Okay, so
you're going to have to get your list together and let everybody kind of know.
Yes, I'll have to post it in the group because there are so many yummy ones.
Yes,
I'll post it on
that'd be
Facebook.
so fun. Yeah, we're going in like 2 weeks, like the 29th through the 1st. So I'm so excited.
Awesome.
And then my thorn is definitely that the Star Witness horse I talked about, like we're trying to get her pregnant and she's like, keeps battling it. Well, we are on like, I don't know, month 25, it feels like, of driving her back and forth to the vet school. And so I'm sending her next week to get checked and hopefully she can get bred and hopefully she takes, because this is like our last time before it's just too hot and past her cycle. So fingers crossed that she actually does get pregnant because we would like her to have a little Europa baby.
Yeah. How cool would that be?
That'd be so cool. So fingers crossed that all of this stuff has happened for a reason and that she can get pregnant this year.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. What about you, Justine?
My goodness. Okay. My rose is that after taking a little break from chickens, we spent a couple of months after like our last flock kind of died off from old age and or raccoon murder. We spent some time away from chickens because, man, when they get murdered, it is brutal. It's just like a terrible thing. But it's like also part of chickens. You know, they're pretty low in the food chain. They're going to get murdered. So we took some time off after the last ones died because it's nice, not going to lie, to not have a backyard and have to worry about them when you want to go to town, yada, yada. So, and we fortified their coop, made improvements. And for a while, it felt like Alex, my husband, was just like placating me by helping me improve the coop. Like I felt like he thought if he just like dragged that process out as long as possible, I would lose interest or something and not actually want to put chickens back in them. And then he would make these weird or like these silly like bets of like, or I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go get chickens. He'd be like, wait, you should like, we've got a trip coming up in 2 months. You should just wait until we're back from whatever trip. And I'm like, this will happen forever. Cause we always eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're always going to go somewhere eventually. So finally I just, brought some home and he's dealing with it. He's doing okay, but I just don't know how this is a surprise. Cause he helped me. Like
hysterical.
It was like one of those like home improvement projects you get into and then they it really tests the limits of your marriage in like a 2-hour period. You know,
that is
it's
amazing.
hot and we're like filthy dirty and like it's a chicken coop, man, you know, but he helped me. We got it done. It looks beautiful. It's safe. Screw you raccoons if you're coming for my chickens. But now it's full of chickens again, and I'm getting eggs, and I'm happy, and life feels fulfilled now that I have chickens again. So that is my rose. My thorn is just, I don't know. It's July. This feels like the longest darn summer ever. You know, I'm lucky to ride. My dressage trainer has found a bunch of horses for me to ride, which is great. Just like, you know, the network of horse people have helped me find lots of nice horses to ride. So I do feel like I'm riding a lot, which is great. But none of that helps when you only want to ride your one dumb broken horse, you know? So we're getting there. We had an impromptu vet visit for like a nasty cut that needed stitches. So, but the vet, I was like, do you want to x-ray the other foot? And he's like, no, not yet. You got to wait. I'm like, oh gosh, I just wish there was like a way to press fast forward, but we're getting there. It's also, well, the summer sucks. So, I mean, if there was ever a time to take a break, it's now. So, but that is my thorn. It's just One day I hope I can ride my horse and it can stay sound, you know? Oh, and
Well, I feel like that's
Fingers
the
crossed.
truest thing. We
And
should
then-
start a support group. Please be sound.
poor Alex, I think he's just so afraid, like, especially after the chickens, that I'm just going to be like, all right, I bought another horse. What I did to him last year, and I'm trying desperately not to do that again, but who knows, it might happen one day. So that's the thorn.
That's amazing.
But we've got a good mailbag I want to pose to both of you guys who train horses. So Lucas wrote in our Facebook group recently, he is looking for recommendations for resources on training young horses. Lucas recently purchased a 4-year-old hunter who will be in full training, but he wants to learn more about the training process and what it's like and what it takes to bring along young horses. So he wondered if we had any good educational resources for him. Do you guys have like any favorite tips and tricks?
Yeah.
Places
So, well, I was going to say places to look would be the biggest thing. Is I love like finding different exercises. Funny enough, on like Pinterest or YouTube, or
Yeah.
I love books. Right, so you get like they've got great young horse books where they'll give exercises or groundwork exercises and stuff. But you would be amazed at how much is honestly on Pinterest and YouTube.
That's a great tip. I'm a big fan of Lainey Ashker's Instagram. She posts a lot of different grids.
And there's a
too.
lot, and find a couple people that you want to follow that kind of share what the exercises are and stuff like that. And I would on Instagram, I'd go like to somebody. I mean, I'm glad the horse is going to be in full training. So that's very, very helpful. But like you want to do some different exercises or whatever, follow somebody that kind of meshes with one, like your body type and what you kind of look like. Cause then I think that, you can ride and watch their style and how they kind of bring up young horses a little bit easier as well.
That's a great tip. What about you, Ellie? Do you?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm of course going to say Buck Brannaman. And the part that I thought was really cool, my friend Helen and and her husband Sam actually went there with 2 of their students and their younger horses, and they are in the hunter jumper equitation world. They are not Western riders, and it's helped even their seasoned horses and stuff. Just doing that groundwork and that, because there's so much you can do without even getting on. That's just, I think, sometimes easier for the horse to understand without having you get in the way when you're on them and you're trying to like give them cues that they're not 100% sure on yet. So that would be my big recommendation. And the other thing is to go watch, like if there's a clinic near you, go watch. Like even if you don't actually participate, audit as many clinics as you can, because it's one of those things where I feel like no matter the discipline, a lot of people will say the same thing, but it takes one person saying it in a way that it just clicks in your head, that it's like, oh, that makes sense. And that's what so-and-so was saying too. Like, I think that's something that has helped me a lot with the young horses, is sampling from everywhere so that you can just hear it said in a different way. Because sometimes it's the same exact tip, but it's just said differently. And you're like, oh, now it makes sense.
Exactly. I love that. That's great. Only
What
other
about you,
point.
Justine?
I mean, my only other point was going to be a bookworm and just like open to knowledge. There's lots of written resources out there from various reputable equestrian magazines, but we had the author on himself just now. I think Doug's riding repair manual answers a lot of questions for young horses, but also helps. I love the way he wrote that book, and just that you can really break it down by the specific problem or something that you're trying to troubleshoot exactly. And he has those tips like laid out in a specific section in that book. But also our friends at Trafalgar Square, the book publisher, have such a huge arsenal of authors. You can read riding, training perspectives from a variety of people there. And it's almost essentially endless. They're always publishing new books. So I feel like that's a great resource too. If you have a question for us and you want us to answer it on the show, you can always send us an email by going to Justine@heelsdownmedia.com, Or you can join our Facebook group. We always have lively and interesting discussions there. It's the Heels Down Happy Hour Podcast Lounge. And if you want to hear more from us, check out heelsdownmag.com for the latest news and follow us online. Our Instagram handle is @heelsdownhappyhour. And on Facebook, we're still Heels Down Mag. If you love our show, please give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we want to say thank you to our partners this week, All Things Equestrian and Zero Proof Horse Streets. All right, guys, that's a wrap.
Cheers.
Cheers.